Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. I'm Simon of Surgeries and today I'm joined by my friend Kim, who some of you may know as Kim Bofo from Twitter and from Instagram and also from her blog Reading Matters.
Yes, maybe.
Maybe. No, you will. I'm sure you will. And me and Kim and Rachel, we worked this out the other day. 11 years, we think.
Yeah.
And we got to know each other through blogging because I had Savage Reads, which I've let go.
Sad.
But we then befriended each other in real life because we worked on the same road pretty much.
Yeah.
And started a book group.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah. And we've kept in contact ever
We
since.
have.
Yes.
And we always will, or else. So, we're going to do in this video is our reading horizon. So what we have read, what we are currently reading and what we're going to read next.
Yeah.
And I should be gentlemanly and let you go first.
Okay, this is a big, exciting moment for me. I used to read a lot of new fiction.
Yeah.
Often before it was published. But in recent years, I've sort of pulled that back and I've read a lot of stuff from my shelves or stuff that's been out a long time. But this is a rare exception. This is a case of, I saw the cover of this book
And you
on
wanted
Twitter
it.
and I thought, that looks really good. So it's Cape May. He's got a weird name.
Chip Cheek.
Chip Cheek, which
Which makes me want to just go, I don't know why.
So I requested this on NetGalley. I don't always get those requests approved.
Well, you should.
Anyway, I read this in the space of 2 days.
Which, can I just point in? So yesterday morning, Kim's been staying the weekend and Kim came downstairs at about 10 o'clock because she'd been finishing a book.
I thought everyone was still in bed. I didn't know what was going
I'm joking. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah,
So you read it in 2 days?
So I read it in 2 days. It starts off, it's set in the 1950s, America, a married couple on their honeymoon who are very naive. They come from Southern America. They go up to Cape May, which is apparently a little bit south of New York, for their honeymoon. She has some connection to the area. I think she, as a child, used to go there quite a bit, which is why they've gone there. But they fall in with this strange couple down the end of the street. It's deserted. I think it's Octoberish. It's like definitely the off season, so there's no one around. And they notice on the street that they're staying on, there's lights at the end of the street. So they go down to investigate.
Yeah.
And they fall in with these people who she somehow knows through some other previous connection. And it starts off as very much like a Richard Yates novel. I don't know if you like Richard Yates.
I haven't, but you have just given me a Richard Yates book.
Yeah, I really
I've always
like
wanted
his
to read
stuff.
him.
It's very 1950s America. I really love 1950s America stories. And it's usually about claustrophobic marriages. This marriage goes a little bit off the boil, shall we say, within 2 days. It's almost like F. Scott Fitzgerald, like Great Gatsby meets Richard Yates. So it starts off as very much young love, and then it morphs into this sort of sexual lust stuff. It's quite heavy on the
Shenanigans.
yes, which I wasn't expecting. That comes as a bit of a shock, and it's quite it's a bit heavy-handed on that. Okay. And I think at some point I sort of began to think,
is this all
I think it's a little bit overdone in places, but I did really enjoy it.
Okay, because I've had it on my shelves for a while and I've been a bit like that about it. Like I really like the cover, but then I just feel I kept hearing about 1950s marriage and possibly like partner swapping or something. I was a bit I don't know how I feel about it. So, but we'll see. I might well get to it soon. You maybe want to read it more.
Okay, that's
not because of the shenanigans. Although you never know. Which actually links into what I just read, which is Out of the Woods by Luke Turner. Well, I say I read it, I listened to it. And this year is becoming my year of non-fiction because I've never read/listened to so much non-fiction ever. And I loved this. This is all about Luke's relationship with Epping Forest. And it starts at the breakup of his relationship with his girlfriend Alice. And they've broken up for lots of different reasons, but he's blaming his bisexuality on it. And then he starts to look at his bisexuality, but also the history of Epping Forest and how they interweave with his life. But also then he looks at his parents who are very religious and that relationship with his sexuality, but then some of the religious stuff that's happened in Epping. It's so cleverly done because it all interweaves. There is a lot of very full-on sex in this book.
Well, yeah, that's the same as Kate May.
And I was listening to it on the bus with my big headphones on thinking, I hope no one can hear what I'm real. And I think Chris came in during one point where I was listening to it on my phone. I was like, are you listening to pornography? I was like, no, it's a book about nature. But it's one of I've not heard many accounts of male bisexuality actually, and it looks at it in a really, really interesting way. So yeah, I would highly recommend
I noticed on the back of your book there's a quote by Brett Anderson.
Brett Anderson of Suede, yes. And Luke is also a music writer. But the thing when you're listening to it as well, he reads it like poetry, but not in a... It's not like you don't understand what's going on, but just I do love it when you hear someone read their own memoir, which will link into what I'm reading currently. Yeah. But next on to you. What are you currently reading, Kim?
I'm currently reading a book that has been on my shelves for 10, 11, 12 years.
I think this is probably the same with me, actually.
Just stoner.
Kim said it was like coming into a bookshop, because Kim was like, I don't think I've got Kate May, and I don't have... So I was like, oh look, they're all here.
Yeah, he's got them on his shelves.
Yeah.
It's an amazing
Ready.
library. I bought this originally when it was republished. It's an old book. I think it's from the 1960s.
It was rediscovered. It's like a rediscovered classic, and loads of people were raving about it.
And it was sort of in what I regard as the heyday of book blogging. This was one
like
of
podcasts, they will come back.
I hope so. It was one of those books that everyone who had a blog was reading and reviewing, and that's why I bought it. But of course I put it on my shelf and I haven't read it until now, because there's a 1965 book club coming up.
It's like a project, isn't it, that Simon Thomas does?
Simon Thomas and Cagsey. And the idea is that you read a book from 1965 and you blog about it in this particular week, which I think is the last week of April, I'm not quite sure. And this book was published in 1965. So I thought, here's my chance to read it. I've started it. I'm about a quarter of the way through. It's basically about a man who defies the expectations that he will take over the family farm. Well, basically what happens is his parents send him away to university to study agriculture, and within the first semester he decides to take a course in literature, and he discovers blogs. Discovers blogs.
The 1950s, oh my goodness.
Wow.
1960s, sorry, 1960s.
He discovers books and literature and art, and his horizons all get opened up, and the war begins, and it's the Second World War, so it's set between the wars.
Okay.
He decides that he's not going to go to war.
Oh.
He's not going to sign up and become an American soldier, which is kind of a bit of a no-no
Quite controversial, wasn't it? Yeah.
Because he wants to focus on his studies.
Oh.
And that's all I've got to.
I've heard it's just an incredible... I think one of the reasons that this book did so well with people, I think, is because it's about a book lover and somebody who finds a lot of books. Yeah. And that obviously chimes really nice. Yes. But I have meant to read that for years. So many people have told me it's one of their favourite ever books. And I just haven't. Now, this is where suddenly it goes a little bit wrong, because I normally am a one book boy. Yeah, I've currently got 3 books that I'm reading all at once. Well, and that's partly because, as I mentioned, I've really got into non-fiction this year. And so I decided to listen to Sinead Gleason's Constellations, and this is a gorgeous cover. The proof is equally gorgeous. And you've actually not long read this.
I read that book.
Kim sent me a message saying, I meant to have painted my hallway today, but I've just read Constellations instead. Wise choice, I say. Oh, sorry. Anyway, but this is Sinead's essay, or their memoir essays, aren't they? About her body and the things that she's been through with her health and all sorts of things, but also it looks at grief in a lot of ways, and it just covers... I'm only about a third of the way through, but I was supposed to meet Sinead in Dublin, and she was actually recording the audiobook, so we couldn't catch up. And so I thought, right, well, what I'm going to do is when the book comes out, I'm going to listen to it, and hearing her read it has made me cry twice.
Yeah.
Because there's sometimes where it catches. Well, also it's the fact her voice catches sometimes, and you're like, oh, and that's when you start to go. So this is incredible. Then, so I'm reading the Women's Surprise Long List at the moment, and Swansong was my next choice, and my mum has really, really enjoyed this. I am struggling with it a little bit, and the reason for that is, there's 2 reasons. One is that this is all about, Truman Capote and the women that he called his swans, who were like his female friends, who, when he had writer's block, he decided to write all about them and their secrets, their affairs, all sorts of stuff, their kind of bitchy thoughts on each other. And in one sense, I'm like, oh, gossipy, delicious, ready for that. But they talk as a chorus. And that's kind of having a little bit of an odd effect for me, because they'll be talking about him, and the fact that one of the things I love is when you get to the Truman sections, as it were, you hear him recounting various points of his life, but he clearly just lied to people all the time. So you hear all the different ways he's told a story to the different women. That's really, really good. But then when you switch to each of the women's lives, because they're a chorus, their voices sound really similar. So I've been getting really confused who is who. And I do think Kelly knows so much about Truman and all these women and Hollywood at the time and the literary world at the time and all that. But sometimes I feel like it's like expected I should know as much, and so sometimes I forget that like Lauren Bacall was Betty Bacall, or sometimes people called her Mrs. Bogart, so you've got multiple characters, and I'm like, hang on, where am I? So I'm just taking it a little bit slowly and reading like 30 pages a day, and that seems to be working better. So I've switched for a book when I'm not reading that to American Marriage by Tayari Jones, and I'm literally not long into this at all. And this is about a couple who've only 1 year into marriage when they're away at they're staying in their hotel because they don't want to stay with his parents, and the police raid him, and he's been accused of raping the woman in the room a few doors down. And that's all I've got. He's in prison now, and they're writing to each other these letters. But it's all about how a bit like what you're saying about Kate May, about how a young marriage can be very easily fractured. So yeah, but the writing is really, really good. This has been a real Marmite book I've seen all over the internet, but I really, really enjoyed it. And my mum did too. Not like, it's all about, what did my mum think? She's on it by proxy now. It's getting too much. So, Kim, what are you going to read next? Ooh, it links in with the Women's Prize long list.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, it's on it.
I actually think I might be the last person in the world to read this, which is Sally Rooney's Ordinary People.
Normal People. There is an
Ordinary
People out, Diana Evans.
And it's got a sort of similar cover,
yeah.
isn't it? Yeah.
We were talking about this yesterday because there are quite a few covers now that I've said have got the Sally Rooney effect. Sarah Winman's new paperbacks have it. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, so I decided to read, I bought this, as you can see, in hardcover, though it is your copy, but I do have a hardcover. I was about to say, she's nicking it. I did buy it in hardcover because Claire from my book group had sent a message to everyone saying, I'm reading this amazing book at the moment, everyone should read it. So I promptly went out and bought it because Claire and I have very similar tastes, but alas, I still haven't read it. But one of the projects that I'm doing is trying to read all the books on the short list for the Kerry, I have to get the name of this right, the Kerry Group Prize Novel of the Year Award, which happens every May. It's Irish novels. I don't do it every year, I might do it every 2 years, but I've discovered some really amazing books.
Oh, real.
And this is on it. I've just read, or I haven't just read, but a few weeks ago I read A Ladder to the Skies.
By John Boyne.
John Boyne,
I might take that on holiday.
Which is on that list as well, and that was an amazing book. So I have high expectations for this because I have read the previous one, her debut, which I put off for a long time as well, and didn't think I would like. I was sort of prepared for everyone's raving about this. Usually books that people rave about, I don't like. But I loved it.
I felt bad because I was so certain I was going to hate Sally Rooney because everyone was calling her the millennial voice. And I was like, ugh, I don't want to read her then. But I read that in, I think, 2 long train journeys, or like a return train journey. I just couldn't stop reading it. And it has got moments where I can agree with some people where they say that it's got imperfections, but I don't want a book to be 100% perfect, I don't think. But I overall thought, what I love about it is she's so good at writing about where people don't communicate, but as you, the reader, know what they're not thinking, which is exciting and frustrating all at once. So I really like that. The book I'm going to read next is non-fiction again. What's going on?
I'm just going to say that. What's going on?
What's going on with me? But this is a book that Kim has very kindly brought for me, and it's Theoretics by Vicky Laveau-Harvie. And this has recently won the Stella Prize in Australia, which is like the Women's Prize, but it includes non-fiction and everything, obviously.
Yeah. Anything as long as it's written by
And the premise of this sounds amazing because all I knew about it was about a woman who distances herself from her family. She goes away and then she gets a call that her mother is ill, goes back to see her mother, but then also sees that her father is basically being starved and there's some sort of Stockholm syndrome going on and the mother is clearly not right.
Yes, it's an amazing story because it's essentially about aging, which probably sounds really dull, but it's like what I think there's a lot of, particularly I know as I get older, you're aware that your parents are getting older, and if you live in a different country, for instance, my parents live in Australia, I live here, what do you do if they get
If
ill?
you hadn't noticed, Kim's from Australia.
Just in case I didn't recognise
Which actually
the
is
accent.
apt, because currently on BookTube it is #AussieApril.
Oh,
but actually
okay.
we haven't made a video about Australian books.
Oh.
Oops.
No, okay, sorry. And this woman, the author, is actually Canadian.
Right.
So, but she
Lives in Australia
she lives
now.
in Sydney. I think she moved there when she was quite young, and she's raised her family there. And when her mother becomes ill, her mother is actually she's in Alberta, so in the sort of prairies of Canada, in quite a remote area. So there's the distance aspect to it, there's the remoteness of living on a big farm,
And also,
not
it
close
sounds
to
like
social services.
Her mum's quite crazy, because her mum's been telling people that she doesn't have daughters, or she'll tell people she has one daughter but she died, when actually she has two daughters that are alive. So I'm so intrigued about this, and it has recently won the Stella, and you read the whole Stella shortlist, didn't you?
Yeah.
Which I would like to do one year, but it's really hard to get the books, and this is particularly rare because this publisher, did they go bust?
Yeah, so it was originally published by Finch Publishing, which are an indie press. I think they're in South Australia. It got published last August. They went bust in December. I was in Australia in January trying to buy all the books on the long list, and every shop I went into, they're like, nope, don't have it, don't have it. I found it in Dimmicks in
Did you do a
Perth.
dance? Did you do a
I was
dance?
like, oh my god, I can't believe I found this book. And then there was some discussion after she won, people saying, oh, there wasn't much buzz about that book. I didn't hear much about that book. And it's like, well, no one could find it. No one could read it. It has since been picked up by Fourth Estate in Australia.
It's got like a starry cover on it.
Yeah, but that didn't come out until end of March. But it is hard to get. If you live outside of Australia, the only way you can get it is to order it direct from an Australian publisher.
Or get a dear friend to bring it to you thousands and thousands of miles.
Yeah.
So those are our reading horizons. What we have read, what we are reading, what we're going to read next. Let me know in the comments down below what you're reading, what you have read now. Do it in the right order because I'm confused. What you have read, what you are reading, what you're thinking of reading next. And Kim will be back in a future video where she's gone through my bookshelves and found 5 books. She can troll me. She can talk about books that she hated that I loved. All sorts. You'll see it. I've done it before. But until then, it's bye from me.
That was bye from me. Sounds like the two Ronnies.
It does a little bit. Bye.
Bye.